Hi guys, welcome to Flowcast, a podcast by Flowout where we chat with successful entrepreneurs, freelancers, and other amazing professionals that are crushing it in their game. We are Flo and Gal, and we'll be your host on this audio journey. In this week's episode, we'll talk with Elena Mazhuha, mentor and advisor to startups and investment director at Flo and Ventures. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation.
Welcome, Elena. We are super happy to have you. How are you today?
Fine, thank you. And how are you?
Oh, pretty great. Excited about this podcast episode and to talk about all the different stuff you have going on. So I suggest we start it off. So can you tell us a bit about yourself, your story? Who are you and how would your family and friends describe you?
Okay. So my name is Elena. I am investment director at Flo and Ventures. Flo and Ventures is an early stage venture capital firm which invests across Europe. Our team is originally Ukrainian, but currently we are based in Poland, in Portugal, in Cyprus, in Spain even, and we have an office in London. So we've so far invested in around 60 companies, I think. And I was the first employee of the fund. So I oversaw its earliest investments. And then I also built a small team of PR and other comms specialists inside our fund, which work with our portfolio companies and help them with business development and PR. And regarding the question, how my friends and family would describe me, I would say that it's pretty probably controversial because my parents and friends think that I'm this crazy productive person, maybe like crazy smart and stuff like that. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that I'm as productive as I can be. I always keep mentally punishing myself for not being productive enough, and I also always want to make more of my time. And also I know plenty of people and I'm friends with plenty of people who are way smarter than I am, but I would say that I'm kind of opportunistic. Usually I try to do things that other people are afraid to do. I quit the job if I don't like it. I cold message plenty of people, even if they are, very popular, famous. So yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool description. Thank you. I really like that you mentioned, like, if you don't like the job, you quit it. You are very opportunistic. Do you think there are some unique skills that you have that helped you become successful?
Yeah, I think that it's that I'm usually not afraid to take this, a leap of faith in something. Like, for example, I was supposed to apply for a master's degree in the US, and I actually applied to a couple of schools after my bachelor degree. But after that, when I got accepted into a couple of schools, and I was actually planning to go there, I've got the job in this VC firm, and I was the first employee there, so it was pretty risky and at the same time very exciting. And I refused to go to get the master's degree, just a month before I needed to go get my visa. So everybody was like super crazy. My parents were super crazy. My friends were like, "Oh my God, are you mad?" but at the same time, I just took this leap of faith, and I'm really happy that I did it. And at the same time, as I mentioned before, I usually like to cold message, cold email everyone. For example, sometimes I just, sometimes I make this lecture for our founders, for Ukrainian founders, for CE founders, and I need to get some pretty popular and famous speakers out there, like for example Natasha Lomas of TechCrunch or Christoph Jans from Point Nine Capital, and I just really cold message them or ask my colleagues to cold message them, and they just agreed, and it was like well, not everybody wants to do that, so I would say that this is probably one of biggest things that play a part in my success.
Great. That's like something similar to how you got here, I suppose.
Kind of.
So you're currently investment director, right, at Flyer One Ventures. So I'm super eager to hear, like, how does your typical day look like?
So I'm responsible for two things. So first of all, it's sourcing new potential deals and bringing them to the investment committee. And the second one is managing the communication team, which consists of writers, of PR managers, and a business development person, who is actually our head of platform inside the fund. And my day is like 50-50 dedicated to new investments and the communications part. So basically, I usually have around 5 or 6 calls per day, probably. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. And some of them are, the majority of them are actually dedicated to finding new exciting companies and investment opportunities. Then I spend some time on answering emails, because I usually need to do that, and my inbox is usually very packed. And afterwards, I help the PR team and the business development team to approve some files, some press releases, some documents, to brainstorm on new ideas for the content that we can generate on LinkedIn or in our blog. And I usually try to not to get like super involved on the operational level, because they know what they are doing. And we hired really great people to the PR team. So I think that they really know what they're writing. But I usually try to, to screen the materials for any potential mistakes, or, mistakes in data, or maybe something, to put new accents to the whole material.
Oh, nice. Definitely sounds like a busy everyday schedule. And
Kind of.
I believe it is. And here at Flowcast, we always like to talk about the present, about the day-to-days, also about the future. But just for the start, I want to look back a bit. Can you tell us a bit more about your background and how you got into the venture capital industry?
So I started my career actually in pure analytics. I worked in a media company in analytics department, and we analyzed which TV programs were very popular, not very popular, which which needed to be canceled, which needed to be added more. And I realized that it's not something that I like to do. And I decided that my way is more like financial. I studied economics back then, and also I got into this exchange program with Helsinki University. And I went there for the whole semester, I think, or probably 2 semesters, because they account semesters differently, a bit differently. And I studied there for 8, I think, or 9 months. I studied like very hardcore economics, like macroeconomics, econometrics, statistics, and stuff like that. And afterwards, I went to pure financial industry like Ernst & Young and Citibank after that. And I realized that I wanted to be kind of closer to the business. And then my friends called me, wrote me a message one day and said that there will be a lecture about venture capital. And I didn't really know what venture capital was. So I just agreed because the speaker was cool, and she was like this, hardcore VC of Ukrainian origin, who made herself like very successful over time. And I thought that sounds nice, interesting, I will go. And after the lecture, I just wrote this fund an email and asked if they're looking for any kind of interns or people like that, because I wanted to pursue my career in something closer to the business. And after a couple of interviews and the task, I was approved, and I actually went for an internship in that fund, which is called TA Ventures. And after that, I finished my bachelor degree, and I was thinking about continuing my career in venture capital and in tech. And yeah, as I mentioned before, I wanted to go to a master's degree, but I didn't go. And here I am.
Nice. And what convinced you to then become a part of Flyer One Ventures? How are they, or how are you different from other venture capital firms?
Yeah, so in terms how we are different is that we have a pretty large operational team of people who help our portfolio companies with digital marketing, recruiting, PR, business development, and other things like testing hypothesis, analytic preparation to fundraising. And why I decided to join the fund is that in fact, I really like the strategy that we are going to be more hands-on than the other funds. So it was a good opportunity for me to learn more about how to build a business, from an outsider perspective. And also I really like the background of our JP because he is an ex-entrepreneur himself. So he actually built businesses and which were pretty successful. And he actually co-founded this company, which is a venture builder located mostly in Ukraine, currently in other different countries. They are focused on mobile apps and on media projects. And the whole company is huge. I think it has like probably 25 companies in the holding and around probably $500 million in annual revenues or something like that. And I like the background. I thought that I can learn a lot from this person, and for this reason I decided to agree, even though it was like super scary.
Nice. And do you feel like this culture, being hands-on, being interested in building businesses, also having experience in that, do you think it affects how you approach sourcing and evaluating new investment opportunities? What are your tactics in this aspect?
Yeah, so we are usually paying a lot of attention to the founders' backgrounds, if they managed people, if they hired people before, how large teams they had in the previous capacities, if they founded some kind of a business or a side hustle, like a podcast, or let's say a restaurant, a cafe, a bar. It doesn't actually matter which kind of business they founded before, because what matters is their operational abilities and abilities to hire great people and identify talent on the market. And also we pay a lot of attention to the size of the market, not size actually, not like size in numerical values. I mean, it's the activity happening on the market. Let's say, for example, if there are plenty of deals or similar deals happening on the market, or a lot of news, or we see that some companies in the similar industry are growing. So it means that something is like actively happening on the market, and it has the potential to, and this company has the potential to grow very fast in the nearest future. Of course, well, I wouldn't say that our operational approach and hands-on approach influences how we choose the companies we invest in, because we try to invest into like super talented people, and sometimes these people are not interested in our help, and for this reason we are helping by request. So if they have any requests, we can help them, but if we see that the company does well on her own, it's their business. We don't want to be involved everywhere.
Nice. And you talked about the factors that affect these decisions, and also, being focused on people. Could you actually share some stories, tell us about some companies in your portfolio and some of the stories of people who started and who you now work with?
Yeah, so I really like the story how we invested into the company HackerNoon. It's a pretty popular media with the user-generated content, especially among programmers, and not only among programmers, but tech people overall. They have, I think, around 3 million in monthly active users or something, readers or something like that. But I actually was a fan of the media because I was reading it from time to time, and I just added their CEO on the LinkedIn and wrote him that it's cool, like what you built there. It's very great, and I mean, I want to write something there one day. And he just replied that, oh, you are working in a venture capital firm, and we are raising a seed round, so do you want to join? And I was like, wow, come on. This is not gonna happen, but yeah, we actually invested into them because well, we like that the founders are actually a couple, and we liked how well they distributed their responsibilities in the company. They trusted each other very much, and they had very common common goals in the life. We like their approach to building a media business. We liked how they are, how they approach, designing this ecosystem of people. It's not only a media. This is kind of like a community of people who write for HackerNoon and who are interested in the success of HackerNoon. So we really like their vision and how they work together, how their skills match. And for this reason, we decided to invest. Another wonderful case is the case of a company which is called Atomic. And we knew the founders, I think, for 2 years. Interesting, but they're also a couple. And they co-founded it wasn't the first business they founded together. And it was like a positive sign for us that they can actually work together on something good. And they also trust each other. And we knew them. We didn't invest, in the very beginning because of like several reasons, and because they actually wanted to raise more like an angel round, and we were a VC firm. And after that, I think 1.5 years passed, and they got into YC, and we contacted them once again and said that like we talked about traction and what they did there. They grew like really fast. And we decided to invest. It happened just, I think, 3 days before the demo day. And it was probably our fastest deal ever, because we made the decision and made the wire transfer within 3 days, probably. It was just like super crazy. We just like invest, let's do that. Yeah, because we really like how the founders work together, how they hired amazing people, how they grew. So yeah, these are a couple of stories.
Super awesome to hear about that. But let's talk about maybe some challenges also. So you're investing, you do your research, but I'm sure, I know it comes with a lot of risk as well. What are some of the risks or like challenges you face?
Yeah, so just, a full disclosure, venture capital is a super risky industry. It's probably like 99% of the startups that you invested in will fail, and you can do anything about that, because even if you invest into a seemingly bulletproof business with no risks at all, something can happen, just something, very random. The market will change, some platform would change, marketing will change, marketing costs will change. So, and for this reason, we try to avoid these very obvious risks, like super bad cap table. Let's say the founders have only like 20% of the company, and some early investor has, for some reason, like more than 50%, or the founders aren't full-time involved into the company. At early stages, it's a huge risk, I would say, because if they have something to, some other opportunities to pursue, I think that one of them will just fail, because, the priorities will be set automatically for them. And another one is if the founder is like openly sexist or let's say xenophobic or racist, probably it poses a lot of risk for us, not only like on the public level and PR level, but also in the moral level. Like, why did you invest into such a person? And also probably if the company, well, if it's a company which is hugely reliant on tech, we wouldn't invest if there is no like key tech person in the team. Like, let's say it's founded by 2 PR people and it's like reliant on some technology and they don't have a proper CTO. I think that this is a big risk for us. But these risks are just obvious, you can check for them very easily at the very beginning of your communication.
Yeah, it all makes sense, I guess. I'm also wondering about, like you also said, you invested into a YC company, right? Do you have any kind of policy about solo founders and then co-founders? Do you think co-founders are better off in general, or do you decide case by case?
We decide case by case, yeah. I mean, we have some companies founded by solo founders, and it's of course a big risk sometimes, because founders are human, and every bad stuff can happen to humans, unfortunately. And but at the same time, we do not discriminate against solo founders. If we see an extremely talented solo founder, we just check out the other key members of the team and if they have any options in the company. And if they do, everything is okay, I think, in most of the cases.
Okay, yeah, great. And can you maybe share some of your insights, like on the current state of venture capital industry, and where do you see it heading in the future? Is it going to just expand? Will companies rely more on it, and so on?
Well, the current state of venture capital is weird, I would say. Like the funds have money, but at the same time, they do not invest because they became more cautious. But I think that plenty of reports were written about that topic, so I wouldn't like dive very deep into that. But I would say that it's becoming very easy for many people to build a startup. And the biggest challenge for me personally currently is that it's if previously it was hard to build something digital and it was the technology wasn't accessible to everybody. Currently, it's accessible to almost everybody. Sometimes you can build an initial product or an MVP with just $5 subscription for something, and that's it. And you have no code tools, you have AI, you have ChatGPT API, you have something else, and you can build on top of that. So the biggest challenge for me personally at the moment is that it will be harder and harder to distinguish which product is potentially successful and can get a huge chunk of the market, and which product is competitive enough. And it will be very focused around people. So you will need to dive very deep into the founders' backgrounds, what they can, what they know, what others do not know. So this is probably one of the biggest challenges of the current state of VC, probably.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty interesting, and yeah, it all makes sense. So let's just move on a little bit to you personally. You are a Forbes 30 under 30 recipient also. So I just want to know, do you have like some personal challenges that you faced early on in your career, and how did you maybe overcome them?
Yeah, I would say that I was like pretty young when I joined the current venture capital firm. I was only 20 probably, or 21 or something like that. And the majority of founders, they weren't, they were older than I am. And for this reason, it was sometimes hard to, hard to pitch a fund to them, or hard to look very serious because you are younger than they are, you have less experience. But at the same time, I just understood that I needed to go on with that. I mean, I wouldn't change my age. I cannot look older. I cannot make myself older. I cannot make up my previous experience. So I just decided that I will keep pitching everywhere and keep looking pretty confident on each conference, on each one-on-one meeting, on each call. And I think it was naturally overcome because I didn't I didn't have any other chances to do that. I didn't have any other opportunities, so I just needed to go on with that and keep doing what I can do and keep proving myself and keep proving that our firm is worth mentioning, is worth noticing.
Do you remember any lessons that you can point out, like in relation to, battling this, being younger in industry where, experience counts for a lot, or any bigger lessons in general that you learn in your time as a VC?
I think that the biggest lesson was that you need to grow up mentally pretty quickly, and you don't need to take everything personal. Like there are some things in venture capital happening, your deal doesn't get approved, or your something else has happened, or somebody is not a very adequate person with whom you join the call, and things like that can happen, and you just need to be very I would say cynical probably about that, because otherwise, if you take everything personally, it would hurt you and hurt you more and hurt you more. And venture capital is a pretty tough industry, I would say. It tends to discriminate a lot, against different people, and you need to learn to be tougher and probably less, personal, or less hurt by everything people say, because eventually the only way that you can prove yourself is to work hard, and that's it.
Definitely something to remember. And you spoke about this age prejudice, and you've seen it from this side, from talking to founders, but also there are many young founders who are trying to talk to, VCs and trying to overcome this challenge of being young. Do you have any advice for them, or just any advice for founders who are trying to raise capital in general?
Yes, there is prejudice against younger founders, especially if VCs. There are some VCs that think that they're for some reason smarter than the founders, and that can happen. And I think that the core advice here is to learn to prove that you are not who they think you are. Like, if they start doubting your experience or your knowledge, you need to find these unbreakable arguments that you are way smarter than they think you are. And it can be anything. It can be, nonverbal means of communication. It can be like real arguments. It can be something else, maybe behavior, or how you approach the fundraising process. But the core thing here is not to show that you are somehow embarrassed that you are younger and that you are maybe not that confident, because they will feel that. They talk to a lot of people during one day, and they know how to feel how other people feel, and they will catch that. They will sniff the fear, they will feel it, and they will try to discriminate you based on that. But if you are confident, if you know how to pitch, if you know your industry, your product, they will notice that too.
Okay, yeah, pretty cool. And let's expand maybe a little bit on that. What do you think a good pitch should include, besides obviously funding information, how much they need, how much, what's a good pitch basically?
So the good pitch is pretty short. For example, you join a call which is like 45 minutes long, or it's 1 hour long, and it's better if your pitch is only like 10 to 15 minutes probably, and the rest of the conversation is just Q&A, because it gives the VCs more time to get to know you better, and to ask everything they want to, and to probably refute some doubts they have about your company. The pitch should usually include the problem and the solution. So which problem you solve, why it's very important, how large is that, how you solve it, and why you solve it this way, how this solution is better, more efficient, faster than the others. Maybe some information on the market, but given that VCs usually research the market themselves, it can be omitted. This part can be omitted. Also, the team slide. It's a very common argument in the VC industry where to place the team slide. I wouldn't say that it matters a lot. Probably like on the second slide or maybe on the last one. But it should be included, and it should be pretty detailed. It should at least highlight the key employees and the founders, but not more than 5 or 4 people on one slide, because then everybody else will be just lost. It should also highlight the core competencies of all the people there. Maybe some companies they worked for before. And it should probably include the photographs. I think that it's easier to process that information when you have a visual description of the founders and you have some information about them, but it's not like a mandatory thing. Also, you should showcase your traction. Usually, it should be dynamic, so you can choose a couple of metrics, maybe one, maybe two, that you are constantly measuring at this point. Like, let's say if you don't have the revenues, you can show some pilot projects. You can show the number of users growing. You can show some retention metrics during the soft launch that you got. But it should be dynamic, not just one number and that's it. And fundraising information. So I'd say that sometimes for some reason founders just omit this part. They just say that they need to raise like $2 million, for example, but they do not say for what, why now, and the expected valuation. So if you can include this information, that would be nice too.
Excellent. And did you have like any experience in the past with founders not explicitly saying how much they need? Is that a mandatory thing? They always come prepared, I guess, but are they unsure how much they are raising? How's that?
Well, actually, yes, it's not a very common thing, but sometimes if when the founders do this cold outreach, or they're just writing you even if they know you, they sometimes do not say explicitly what they are raising at the moment. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. So first of all, it may be just that they do not know how much they're raising, and it's a problem, I would say, because I don't know if this round is suitable for us, because we, for example, try to participate only in the rounds which are 2-3 million and in total, and not bigger ones. And if you do not understand how large is the round, it's becoming very strange, and you cannot make this initial decision if it fits your investment thesis. Also, but sometimes it's just the case that they're not raising like a big round. They're just doing this rolling round thing where they raise small amounts of money throughout the year. But I would personally prefer if they set it like that, that we are raising this rolling round and that's it. Because a lot of early stage companies actually do that, and it's not very, it's nothing embarrassing about that.
I see, that's very insightful, and I really love how you get into details. I hope anyone listening who is looking to raise funds in the future is taking notes. And I have another question that you might have a really great insight into, because you talked about how you used to and you still do cold emails, cold DMs, and I'm sure you're also on the receiving part, that you get plenty of those. Could you tell us how to write a good cold email, or what are the main problems with the bad ones?
Yeah, so cold emailing is pretty simple, I would say. So if we're talking about cold emails from startups to VCs, it usually makes sense to be pretty concise. Like in the first part of the email, you should mention that you are raising money and you wanted to talk to this investor because of this and that. It should be like a bit personalized. So you don't need to like study the whole biography of this particular investor, but you can just mention a couple of companies which are similar to yours or operate in the similar industry as yours, or something about investment thesis or something else to show that you actually studied this VC before. And of course, it should like include the name of the VC, because if it's like hi sir or madam, it doesn't feel right to reply to those emails. So it should be a little bit personalized at least. And then I usually suggest that you write this short part where you just say that, hi, my name is, I don't know, Elena. I'm the CEO of this company. We are raising this amount of money, et cetera, et cetera. And afterwards, you are writing a short summary about the company. So it's about the product, maybe one sentence about the market trends, like the market is growing, these deals within the last 5 years. Then a little bit about the traction of the company, just the bullet points about the revenues, about the number of users, about the retention metrics, or stuff like that. And then in the end, the amount of money you're raising and probably expected solution that you want to have in the current round, or the proposed round structure, like we are raising at SAFE, CLA, or equity round. And I would say that's it. But usually there's, the biggest mistakes with cold messages is that they're not actionable enough. Like you do not understand what to do with this information, or they do not include enough information for you to understand if it's a good fit. So, for example, if it doesn't include any traction, you can't understand what's the stage of the company. If it doesn't include what the product does, you do not understand why you should like reply to that. So yeah, I think that it should be made very easy for the person who receives the email to understand what do you want from her and why do you want that.
Definitely, and thank you for giving us the template, basically. And you talked about traction, right? What's maybe your view on, investing in unvalidated idea? Do you ever invest in just like a concept? Do you always need some kind of testing to make the final decision?
I'd say that we never probably invested into something that wasn't like a little bit proven on the market and with some kind of traction. So we, in terms of the traction, of course, the perfect case scenario is that if you have some revenues, like around 5,000 per month or 10,000, which is like even better. But sometimes startups cannot boast that because they have different business models or their sales cycle is pretty large. So they can show only some pilot projects or they can show some users. But we usually as a firm need to see some kind of traction. But angels usually invest into something which wasn't like really proven and which has an MVP probably and some very early traction or no traction at all. There are also some pre-seed, like really truly pre-seed firms on the market. Like for example, Smok Ventures. This is a Polish fund. They invest in purely pre-seed companies with no traction at all. Sometimes there is, I think, 500 Global and 500 Emerging Europe, which also invest into very early stage companies. So there are VCs which invest into these kinds of companies, but we unfortunately do not do that.
I see. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Of course, we talked about risks earlier, and it all comes with extra risks, which is also, works for some and not for others. And while we were on the topic of communication, I thought about, you said before that you worked in PR, or did you handle some of the PR, not operations, but more of a strategy at Flyer One Ventures. Could you tell us more about how important PR is for a startup's success, and why did you actually decide, to help companies in your portfolio to get more coverage?
It may sound probably pretty counterintuitive, but I don't think that PR plays any role in any startup success, unfortunately. But this is the truth. I mean, it's important sometimes to make a company Googleable, and I think that it's especially important for companies which are not on the, let's say, they are not born in the US or in the UK and they still want to raise money from the US or UK based VCs, then they need to think about that. They need at least to make announcements when they raise a round or something like that, so that people who Google you afterwards, they can find a couple of articles about you and think that you are a real existing company, probably that you are here somewhere on the map of startups. But being actively involved into PR is not obligatory for all startups. It may be more beneficial to the companies which operate in enterprise tech or in B2B SaaS, because their clients are companies and sometimes like very big established institutions, and they need to see that they are working with somebody legit. And if you're building a B2C companies and you're totally reliant on marketing, so I don't think that you need that. I mean, it's not that obligatory. It's not necessary. You can achieve a lot of success without being in TechCrunch and Business Insider. But yeah, sometimes PR pays off when you want to build this brand, especially if your focus is enterprise clients.
Okay, yeah, I really love that you're really hands-on into the startups. I really like the approach, and it's, I guess, a pretty interesting one compared to what we are hearing about VCs in general. I'd really love to talk more about it, but I would just like to ask you, since we are nearing the end of this podcast, do you have any advice you would have given to your younger self, knowing all the things that you do now?
Yes, I have a couple of advice. So first of all, is that you should probably avoid people who try to undermine you at any cost. Like, for example, sometimes you meet with people who, for some reason, think that you're stupid, or they try to make you feel stupid. And they do that maybe because they're very uncomfortable with themselves, or they have some other issues and they just want to, make other people suffer. And you should avoid them. You shouldn't try to be better for them, because they won't appreciate that at all. They will just be, they will try to undermine your every attempt, and it's not worth that. And the second advice is that asking questions and asking for advice is not a bad thing. And if you don't know something, you should probably first Google it and then ask for advice. But it's you shouldn't be afraid to ask anyone for help or other things.
Okay, thank you. Pretty great advice. I appreciate it. I guess all the users, all the listeners as well. So before we end this episode, I'd just like to also ask you a few burst questions, just more general ones. So what's your favorite book?
My favorite book is What You Do Is Who You Are by Ben Horowitz. And probably the other one is The Story of Minecraft. I think it's called The Unlikely Tale of Marcus Persson or something like that. It's the story behind the company, which is called oh my god, I forgot the name. Sorry, it's the story behind the Minecraft, which is a super popular game and still super popular and still growing.
Okay, and do you listen to any podcasts? If so, what's your favorite? Or if there is anything that maybe an upcoming startup founder might find useful?
I'm not like an avid listener to podcasts, unfortunately. I am very, it's hard for me to concentrate while listening to podcasts. I sometimes listen to audiobooks. But a lot of my friends listen to 20 VC podcasts, and they say that it's amazing, especially for early stage founders. So I'd probably recommend that, because I also want to listen to that one.
Okay, and for a more lighter note, what's your favorite hobby?
I like playing games, and I'm really into movies. I like to read a lot about movies, how they were created, everything about the actors and stuff like that. And I also play a lot, especially console games.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. Thank you for sharing, and thanks for all the insights. We both learned a lot. I'm sure listeners as well. So thank you again. Appreciate your time, and all the best in the future. And yeah, hope we can chat again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.